think you should start recording.
Start when ready.
We should include this beginning part again.
Alrighty then.
Well, it's not that
We should
exciting.
have Steven on the podcast at some point.
We should. We should definitely do that.
We should ask him about his first smartphone.
We'll ask people if they've ever if they knew that Steven, they were aware that Steven never had a smartphone until a week ago. I think he fooled everyone.
Yeah, we'll ask them if that affects his authority in their minds.
Yeah, it's what's the word? It's the scandal of the century. Steven doesn't have.
It is. In the smartphone world, it's big news.
Well, if we're leaving this part on the podcast, everyone's going to hear. So I guess the truth is out. But
We can always cut it out.
no, let's leave it. All right. Hey, everyone. Welcome to the 10th episode of the Pocketnow PocketCast podcast. I am Brandon Miniman, editor-in-chief of Pocketnow.com. Also on the line is Evan Blass, managing editor of Pocketnow. Holler back, Evan.
Holler.
Yeah, good job. And also on the line is Anton D. Nagy, senior editor of Pocketnow. Holler back, Tony.
Well, I'm going to holler back too, but first I'm going to please ask you to excuse me. If you hear some strange sounds in the background, it's my neighbors tearing down walls, so I'm sorry for that.
Is that a metaphor? They're tearing down walls, or are they
No, they're redecorating.
tearing down walls, breaking down barriers? That's what we do.
Yeah.
Very good. So a lot of smartphone news to talk about today. Got a big list here, and then we're going to take your Twitter questions. I was supposed to inform the others of what the Twitter questions might be, but it's just going to be a surprise because it's just more fun that way. So first thing we want to talk about, on April 3rd, and someone's blinking me here, April 3rd, we were talking about the Google artwork on the front page, which had ice cream and ice cream sundae, which is very strange. Usually they use that as an opportunity to commemorate something. They were commemorating, I don't even know if that's the right word, they were celebrating the 119th anniversary of the first documented ice cream sundae. It just seemed very strange that they would advertise or stop sending me IMs. Seems very strange that they would advertise something like that unless there was a reason, and we're thinking about the next version of Android. Do you guys think that this is the first hint? No one's really talking about this.
I do.
You do?
I agree.
Yeah. So I was looking up some release dates, and it looks like ice cream should be talked about probably starting next month. I mean, so it was November, October-ish when we first heard about gingerbread. It was actually November, and Google operates on about a 6 to 7, maybe 8-month release cycle with Android. So that puts us at about May or June, which kind of makes sense. They probably want to have the new version of Android out in time for the holiday shopping season. What do you guys think will be the headline feature of ice cream?
Well, before we get to that, I just want to emphasize a little bit on this Sunday thing because I don't know how many guys of you out there know that actually ice cream sundae is a combination of several other ice creams. And recently we just heard that, we knew it, that honeycomb features will come to gingerbread and that will be ice cream.
Ooh.
So in my mind, I think it's really clear that there's going to be a mix between honeycomb and gingerbread, just like in sundae, several flavor mixes. And this should be a pretty strong indication.
It's a really good analysis. I didn't really think about that.
I was in the ice cream business after all.
You were? Oh.
Yes, I was. Previous job.
Wow, that's interesting.
So, yeah, I think that it's a strong indication.
And so what do you think is going to be the headline feature in ice cream?
Well, it's hard to say. I think there will be more touch-friendly features taken from Honeycomb and from tablet and ported along to smaller devices. We can have a very nice email application, the new media player, an improved internet browser. So I think it will be around these.
Yeah. What do you think, Evan?
This is just totally, speculation and more hope than anything else. I think it would be nice if they really optimized for multi-core processors.
Oh,
Android can handle it right now, but I think with this newest generation of phones, Android really has to take it to the next level.
absolutely. So I agree with that one. Multi-core support's huge. A better way to fast app switch or multitask, no more tap and hold. So maybe we'll see the permanent multitask button come over from Honeycomb on tablets, which would be great. And yeah, an improved web browser with possibly a better speed and better tab management. The stock browser of Android has really cruddy tab management. You have to go into another menu, and it's kind of a slow interface. So there's a lot to do with Android for phones, and it's probably going to be a pretty exciting update. Unlike Gingerbread, which really was a very incremental upgrade that really only appeased people making games and people wanting to do near field communication payments.
Hey, I was just gonna say that could be the sleeper hit of the of that version is the NFC capabilities.
You know, do you guys think NFC is the future of payment?
Yeah, but the question is, when's it going to happen? I was talking to an analyst at CTIA, and he doesn't think it's gonna be a regular thing for many years because there's no incentive for retailers to implement the hardware because it's another person taking a bite out of the pie.
It's just like, I mean, it's just like a credit card.
Right. But the way he was explaining it made a lot of sense. There's no one that really is pushing for it at this point, and it doesn't make financial sense for anyone.
And it's not even a convenience for the consumer. I mean, it's not like it would encourage more sales. When you go to the local whatever, you're going to bring your wallet because that has your ID in it, and presumably you've driven there and you need your ID. I mean, you have your wallet on you anyway. You've got your phone in the other pocket, but it's the same amount of effort to take out your credit card or cash than it is to, take out your phone.
I think it will be just an additional option. I mean, yeah, it definitely will be a feature for the future, but I don't think it will be for the near future, maybe midterm or long-term future. It will be just another option to purchase something this way.
I feel like it'll be used mostly for micropayments. Like say you just want to buy like one subway ride. Right now, it's sort of a pain because you have to go to the machine, buy a ticket, blah, blah, blah. If you could just do it with your phone, you could swipe it right at the turnstile.
Yeah, that's a good point. Situations where you have to go to a kiosk to pay, like a parking garage or a transit system, that could be an interesting use.
On a side note, I'm sorry, who did I interrupt?
Oh, go ahead.
On a side note, talking about features, we've seen that recently Android got some business-oriented features. Do you think that Ice Cream Sundae or Sandwich or whatever its name will have some business-oriented features in the future or at launch? Because currently Android is a little bit lacking on the business part.
I guess RIM still has sort of the market there for business users, and obviously that's a very, very, very profitable industry. In fact, one of the reasons Microsoft took the release path that they did with Windows Mobile was to capture the business market back with Windows Mobile 5.0. They were trying to beat BlackBerry, and then they realized how big the consumer market is, and it's as big, if not bigger, than business. So yeah, hopefully as a consumer and not really a business user, hopefully Google's focusing on consumer-friendly features and not trying to make it more secure and remote management, which would be nice anyway. But yeah, I could see some business-friendly features being thrown into Ice Cream.
Well, what we're starting to see now is a push towards making phones dual purpose, dual use, meaning that they have two distinct profiles, one for personal and one for business, and you can sort of sandbox those two different usage cases, and so it allows people to have one phone instead of carrying their BlackBerry and their Android or iPhone or whatever else it is. So I think that's something that could get embedded into the OS eventually.
Yeah, back in 2008, 2009, as if that was such a long time ago. It was very common for me to see, at least out and about, somebody with a BlackBerry, and then they take out their iPhone, and they've been carrying two phones. And then iPhone has improved in the corporate security department, although not to the extent of BlackBerry yet. And yeah, I think there's a desire for people to carry one device, and I think Google knows this, and they're going to try to make that one device an Android phone.
Absolutely.
Right.
Cool. All right, let's move on. Let's talk about these Windows Phone 7 updates. If you look at the Windows Phone website, where's my update, and you click on International, you'll see that the vast majority of phones have gotten their March copy and paste no-do update. But then if you flip over to the United States, it's like has been unchanged for a week. I mean, the HD7 and the Venue Pro, no one has that. The HD7 is really the only phone in the US to have gotten no-do. The Surround, the Quantum, the Focus are still in testing. So this is like molasses. Although it is interesting that in the United States, the updates are a lot slower, which really says something about probably the carriers that are taking their time.
Now the Arrive that shipped with Nodo, right?
Right.
And I would assume that the HD7S will do the same.
Yep.
And the Trophy whenever that comes out on Verizon.
Verizon Trophy. I was thinking about this the other day, guys. We've got to see a new wave of Windows Phone 7 hardware, for the holiday shopping season. I mean, the launch devices are they're lingering, and we're going to see the Trophy on Verizon. Is that right? There was the Mozart.
Yeah.
The Trophy.
Well, we also saw those renders of the Ignite and the Prime.
Oh yeah, that's right. So some new HD phones, the Ignite and the Prime, which might actually be announced tomorrow, and we're going to talk about the HTC event tomorrow, although if you're listening to this podcast after, you already know what has been released. But the way I look at it is these launch devices are just being milked. I mean, we're going to see yet another version of the HD7, whoop-de-doo. So when do you guys think we're going to see a fresh wave of Windows Phone 7 devices, and what kind of innovation or changes do you think that they will bring?
Well, I think we won't see any fresh Windows Phone 7s until at least the third quarter, because we first need to hear from Microsoft on the second chassis specifications and the new minimal requirements, and we have so far not heard of those. And I think it's normal that Microsoft sets out the new requirements and then OEMs and manufacturers come out with new devices and announcements. I think we might or might not, I don't know, see or hear something at this year's Mix, which will start, I think, this week. But I don't think we will see any fresh Windows Phone 7s until August, September, or October.
Yeah, got some time there. And the next wave, let's call it Generation 2 of Windows Phone 7 devices, do you think we're going to see dual core? I mean, is that even necessary in Windows Phone 7? It's already very fast and very fluid.
Sure. You always want hardware to encourage software developers to push the envelope even more.
Do you guys think we're going to see Windows Phone 7 support higher screen resolutions in Generation 2?
Higher, no. Lower, yes.
Lower, really?
Yeah, because
so we heard about Chassis 2.
HVGA.
That's kind of congruent with the Gartner analyst report that said one of the ways that Windows Phone 7 is going to take market share, if they're right, is by reducing the price point of these smartphones. And really, you can only do that by using lower end components like HVGA screens. That would just be kind of depressing, though, to see the nice looking Windows Phone 7 interface on a resolution screen that's half basically what you get on the phones now. I mean, imagine, I wonder if that means that the live tiles, you only get to see 4, instead of 8.
I think everything will be scaled down and the experience will be just the same.
Just the same? That's an interesting thought. Very good. Well, why don't we talk about the event tomorrow? HTC is holding an event in the UK. We're pretty sure it's going to be the HTC Pyramid, called the Sensation. What other surprises do you think we're going to see?
I don't think there'll be any surprises. I think we'll see the Evo 3D GSM version probably.
So the Evo 3D GSM, the Sensation, and do you think the
No, that won't be. The Pyramid is a separate device.
Right, so do you think tomorrow they're going to talk about the Pyramid or just the Evo 3D?
I think we'll see both tomorrow because we've started to see the Evo pop up at retailers. So, I think there's some information out there that it's coming.
How about the Prime and the Ignite?
That I don't know. I mean, anytime you see renders of a device like that, there's a good chance that it's coming up pretty soon, and those came out at the same time as the Pyramid render. So I would expect to see those, if not tomorrow, then within the next month probably.
They took the pictures down of the Prime and the Ignite. For those that are unfamiliar, they are Windows Phone 7 devices. One is kind of like a Desire Z, and the other one, what was the other one?
It's just a slate.
Just a slate.
And a lower end at that one.
Kind of a lower end slate. Kind of reminds me of the Mozart and the Trophy, but maybe.
I like the Mozart.
He was a good composer.
I'll be on a more pessimistic note, and I'll say we will, if we are lucky, only see the Evo 3D GSM version and the Pyramid, aka Sensation. But we might also see a new version of Sense because the Evo 3D obviously has a new version of Sense, and we might see that on the Sensation too.
Yeah, that's probably very likely. I mean, the new version of Sense is probably only tuned for the QHD display, which of course the Sensation and the Evo 3D have.
Good point, Tony.
Thank you.
Very good. Let's move on to some Apple news. So a new patent was awarded to Apple to extend the functionality of their 30-pin connector to support the Thunderbolt, not to be confused with the Verizon phone.
By the way, aren't there any trademarks involved with the Thunderbolt, the device, and Thunderbolt, the connector?
Evan, do you know about any trademarks?
There may be. It's as far as I know, that's still a code name. I mean, has that been finalized as the retail name or the retail branding of this technology?
I think it's the standard name and it's the final name of the technology.
Yeah, it is. If you go to the Apple website, it is called.
Yeah, they could absolutely run into trouble. I mean, it's in the same general, classification of communication devices.
I think it does a disservice to the Apple technology because when I think of Thunderbolt, the HTC Thunderbolt, I think was talked about a good bit before Apple's Thunderbolt technology. So there's kind of a perception problem, I think, brewing a little bit as Verizon continues to aggressively promote and advertise the HTC Thunderbolt. So this 30-pin connector would allow you to do faster data speeds with USB 3 and Thunderbolt, but I'm just wondering when they're going to get rid of this 30-pin connector. We've probably talked about this before, and just go with micro USB. The 30-pin connector is big, and if you look on the new iPad 2, you can almost see how they're reaching the threshold of thickness to be able to actually use the 30-pin connector. It's sort of rounded off on the side, and it doesn't snap in as nicely as it did on the iPad 1.
Yeah, that's true. But I think the problem is that there's such a huge ecosystem of third-party products that use that connector that there's just no way that they could get rid of it anytime soon. I think more likely we would see a micro USB port added, so that you could be charging while you have something connected to the 30-pin.
I concur here, and I'm not sure if you guys heard, but in Europe, the European Union and the European community came up with a standard that all smartphones will be using micro USB as a standard connector. So in case Apple doesn't want to get into issues banning them or that won't allow them to sell the iPhone 5 in Europe, I think they might as well add a micro USB port too.
I couldn't see them banning the iPhone because it doesn't have the micro USB. I mean, Apple does whatever they want.
Well, I'm not sure if it will be compulsory or if there is a date up to which everybody should switch towards micro USB, but for sure the standard agreed is micro USB in Europe.
Hmm. That it's not clear though if that's voluntary or if there was a law passed, right?
Right.
So.
And just another thought. I'm sorry on this Thunderbolt thing with the higher speeds. Now, I'm always into new technology and improving, but USB 3 and 10 gigabytes per second. Would you really take use of that speed? I mean, take a normal day-to-day scenario when you copy pictures or you sync music from your PC to your iPhone. Will you see any difference between Thunderbolt, the connection, and your standard USB 2 connection? I mean, there's certainly and definitely a limit of reads and writes on the flash memory of smartphones, which is embedded. They have a limit. And once, I don't think it will reach 10 gigabytes per second, which is the standard for Thunderbolt. Wouldn't it bottleneck the standard?
Sounds that way. And the thing about these higher data speeds is that the use case scenarios are so limited. I mean, I just built a new computer which has USB 3, and I didn't even hook it up because I don't see. I mean, USB 2 is very fast unless you're moving like 30 gigabytes of data. Those speeds are just almost unnecessary. And Thunderbolt does 10 gigabits per second, and as you imply, I don't think the flash memory can even take advantage of that. Although presumably they'd tune it up, make it a little bit faster so it can work with that.
Yes, but how much data do you move from your iPhone to your PC and vice versa on a day-to-day basis?
I know,
1,
right?
2 gigabytes?
And it's almost a step back because we want wireless sync. We want cloud sync. We don't want to plug in anymore. I mean, it's kind of like a step backwards. Maybe transferring movies, but then you're just going to download it straight to your phone, you know?
Yep.
We need USB 4. That'll solve all our problems.
Which will be wireless.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Remember wireless USB? Whatever happened to that?
Still kicking around.
They found that it might cause cancer, all those wireless. I think the coolest thing's going to be when we have wireless power, not just inductive charging, but real wireless power.
Yeah, and then we'll have our routers and our Bluetooth devices and our wireless keyboards and mice, and everything will be wireless around them, and our heads will explode.
Yeah, you got to wonder about that. Anyway, sort of a tangent here. Do you guys remember before micro SD, there was mini SD?
Yeah, I have a bunch of those.
Me too.
That was around for literally 1 or 2 generation of phones. And then it was killed very quickly. So hopefully no one bought any, well, it sounds like Evan did, any mini SD cards.
Oh, yeah, I got a bunch of them.
It's just that on the same note that I don't think that SD cards, regular big SD cards, will disappear in the near future because they are definitely the standard in digital image capturing in cameras and camcorders. I think the mini SD was a step towards the micro. It was a mid-step. The question is, will we see a nano SD, which will be even smaller than the micro SD?
I think
I'm sure they can get any smaller. I mean, these are already like, they're difficult to manipulate.
they are. You could swallow one and be all right. In fact, I tried. And
Memory extension?
yeah, I've now I have 32 gigabytes of memory inside of me. So everything you guys say to me is just stored away in my micro SD chip.
Don't forget to defragment.
Oh, well, actually, with flash memory, you shouldn't defragment.
Right.
Very interesting. When are they going to start making phones with compact flash slots?
Wouldn't that make them bigger?
Yeah, I know, it's a joke. Although the iPacs of the past had those expansion sleeves that allowed you to, use compact flash memory.
What happened to that lineup?
Oh, well, it got replaced by more modern equipment. Anyhow, Very good. So let's move on, talking a little bit of WebOS, a little bit of everything today. So we knew that there was a keyboardless HP WebOS device coming. I mean, it's been in the making, and everyone wants one because if Palm thinks or HP thinks that everyone wants a hardware keyboard, they're kind of wrong. And so there's a leaked image of potentially the HP Stingray from Pre-Central. And it basically looks like it's got the lines of a WebOS device. It's a little bit blurry. It has an iPhone-like look. It kind of actually looks like a Touch HD. Wouldn't you say so, Tony?
Nexus S.
Yeah, good point. Nexus S because of the camera on the front, but it also has a, generic look to it. Why do you think that it's taken HP or Palm so long to? I mean, the Palm Pre was launched 2 years ago or so. Why do you think it's now that they're finally starting to extend the form factor to something?
I think tradition. I mean, from what I know, and I don't know that many Palm or HP devices because they're not so common here in this region of the world I'm living in. But from what I know, it's tradition. Every recent Palm device had a hardware keyboard. I mean, it was a signature. And
Yeah, I'm sorry.
no, go on because I would like to know.
The whole Trio line. I mean, well, first of all, Palm has always been sort of reticent to change faster than the industry or to keep up with trends. I mean, they really started resting on their laurels after the Trio 600 and 650, and up through the Trio 800 and Trio Pro, there wasn't really much of a change in the form factor or in the features. Bumped up camera resolution a little bit, screen resolution here, but there really weren't that many features added or that many risks taken, and that's that was the ethos of the company for many years, and it led to them needing to get bought by another company.
It's so funny because that used to be okay. Taking their time to perfect a keyboard and having release cycles that were a year, and that's sort of what Palm continued when they came out with the WebOS operating system and the pre-line of devices in Pixie. But now it just can't be that way. It's almost to the detriment of the customer because these companies can't really perfect and take their time. They've got to innovate as fast as possible.
Well, I mean, beforehand, I'm not sure that Palm was big enough to be able to, put out, a device every 6 months.
Right.
I just wanted to ask one thing. On the same note, do you guys remember how long it took BlackBerry to ditch hardware keyboard and come out with a touch-only smartphone?
And it sucked. It was horrible.
So I think it's mainly tradition.
I think when the what's the name of that BlackBerry phone? I'm blanking.
Storm?
Of course. When the Storm came out, I think a lot of people were under the impression that they came out with this dynamic screen that would actually mold to almost feel like a keyboard. I mean, we've been talking about a futuristic technology where the screen can actually become porous or something like that. And they came out with this thing that was basically a clicky mouse pad, and it was insulting, and it was horrible to use. And then they, for the Storm 2, they added 4 sensors, which made it a little bit better, but most people I talk to that have a Storm just don't really like it, or they sent it back and are now using an iPhone or something.
Yeah.
Have you guys ever used a Storm?
Yeah, I have one. I rescued it. Remember that story where my friend got a new phone and I offered him $10, just to be able to play around with the Storm, and he wouldn't take it because he wanted to destroy it, and I had to offer him $20 in order to get the phone.
So it's a first gen?
Yeah. So it's actually sort of worthless to me. I didn't realize this at the time. It doesn't have Wi-Fi, and since I don't have cell service on it, the only way to get an internet connection is to tether it to a computer.
It's not worth the effort, obviously.
Right.
Have you ever used a Storm, Tony?
No, actually, the only BlackBerry device I've used is the Bold, which I'm currently using, first generation 9000, I think.
Speaking of the Bold, how about that Bold Touch? Another thing it took a long time for RIM to do was to couple their awesome keyboard with a touch screen. The Bold for many generations now, and the Curve, and the many other keyboarded BlackBerry phones don't have touchscreens.
You got the Torch now, but that was sort of panned.
Yeah, that's a little bit different. But to take this traditional BlackBerry device and add a touchscreen, I think it's going to be pretty cool, and potentially rejuvenize the line a little bit. Very good. Well, all right, let's move on. Speaking of WebOS, it looks like the Pre 3 is heading to Verizon this summer. There were some pictures again from Pre-Central showing a Pre 3 with Verizon sort of branding in the cellular status area, which I guess would make sense. Although I'm a little bit surprised, and maybe we still have to wait to see this. But I would think that Sprint would be the first with the Pre 3 because they were first with the Palm Pre. But then again, Verizon was first with the Pre Plus, and of course, then Verizon got so maybe their relationship, HP Palm's relationship is best with Verizon at this point in time. What do you guys think about the Pre 3?
Not too much. I mean, I used a Pre Plus for a little while. I wasn't too impressed with it. I think it had some potential, and so with WebOS 3.0, perhaps it'll live up to that potential. But I didn't like the direction that Palm went in with these devices, and I think that the Pre 3 is just sort of a bigger Pre Plus or Pre 2, which is itself basically a Pre and a Pre Plus. They're all the same.
Yeah, I mean that's the problem I have with WebOS at this point. They're all the same, and I think that WebOS has evolved too slowly, and everyone acclaimed its multitasking prowess and how smooth it was and fast it was. Yeah, that is true, but that doesn't mean that the operating system can still look the same, almost exactly the same, 2 or 3 years after its release. After coming from an Android phone, it would be hard for me to use a Pre 3, even though there are changes to WebOS 3.0, because you got this home screen that you can't do anything with. You can add 4 icons to the bottom. You can multitask like a champ, but that's it. When you get back to your home screen, you get a wallpaper and a search field at the top. It's not very versatile for my needs.
Yeah, and this coming from a guy like me who has never used a WebOS device, I cannot really judge on the operating system. I can only judge on the outer aspect of the smartphones. And the Pre 3 looks just like the Pre 2 and the Pre 2 Plus and the Pre. So it's a line which I think it's getting old.
Yeah, and what's interesting is when analysts look at market share of these smartphone operating systems, they don't even include Palm. It's kind of strange, but I think pretty telling and pretty accurate. It's WebOS devices are sort of niche devices now. They have their following. They've got their crowd of enthusiasts, but they just don't have that mass market appeal for some reason. But hopefully that'll change with the Palm Pre 4. Looking forward to
or the Stingray.
Or the Stingray, yeah, exactly. Got to have that sexiness. Stingray might have it.
Yeah, those tablets too. Maybe that'll be their future.
The tablet, the touchpad takes that idea of a useless home screen to an incredible level. Because you have all this screen space to work with, right? What is it, 1280 by 800 pixels or 1024 by 768? And all you can do is click on a row of icons on the bottom. It's worse than the iPad's lack of versatility. And
That's saying a lot.
Yeah, that is saying a lot. I mean, it's almost an extreme opposite of, say, Honeycomb, where you can have widgets on the home screen or shortcuts or whatever you want. But that said, the touchpad does have a really cool level of fit and finish once you get into the applications that is probably a little bit cleaner and more modern looking than the iPad. Anyhow, so let's move on. Speaking of iPad, iOS, is the iPhone 5 getting a capacitive home button? 5 to Mac posted a picture that could very, very easily have been faked. Do you guys think it makes sense for the iPhone 5 to have a capacitive home button?
In a word, no,
Well,
because um, users of the iPhone were always so reticent to capacitive buttons. They were always so proud of the clicking button, which makes you feel that you're actually clicking a button. And this is also my experience. I kind of hate capacitive buttons because yes, you have that vibrate feedback, but you don't actually get a sense of the button. If it was up to me, all the smartphones would have hardware clicking buttons, but hopefully it's not up to me.
yeah, I think it depends, from whose perspective you're talking about it making sense. From the users, I agree with Tony. I don't like capacitive buttons. Especially ones that don't light up until you touch them. So you basically have to hit the wrong button in order to find the right button. It's just ridiculous. Um, but from Apple's perspective, it does make sense because the clicky buttons are one more thing to break. So less clicky buttons equals less returns equals greater profits.
And not to mention having a lack of a button would not only save costs, but it would also be more versatile. So maybe they could have a capacitive button on both sides this doesn't even make sense, but it could be maybe a dynamic capacitive area. So all you have to do is tap in a general vicinity so that when you rotate the phone to landscape and then rotate to landscape on the other side, you're not constantly having to say, okay, the home button's on the right, now it's on the left. You could say, okay, it's always on the right. It doesn't matter where I press. I can always get back home. It's funny that we're talking about a capacitive home button because I thought recently we were talking about no home button at all with gestures. That would be probably even more extreme than going capacitive.
Well, didn't Apple just patent that smart bezel for for a device which would actually be similar to what you're talking about, using gestures on the side of the screen to perform, whatever tasks they decide.
Yeah, and that smart bezel would pave the way for, an iPad 3 that hopefully doesn't have a home button because it's even worse in that case because you're constantly flipping it over to landscape and the button changes location. With Honeycomb, of course, your home button is always in the bottom left corner, and I think they did a really good job with that. So perhaps iOS devices are going in that direction. You guys like how I rolled my R?
Yeah, you to sound like me.
Nice. So let's move on talking about the Droid X squared. And Evan, do you like how I said squared and not two?
Yeah, that's what we're thinking now is that it's going to be called squared, but that's just speculation on our part at this point.
Yeah. So it's funny the Droid X squared, how it's gone through these periods of time where we thought it was going to be just a faster Droid X with the same body. And then and now after seeing some benchmarks, it looks like it's got some pretty big upgrades in terms of the specifications. QHD screen, Tegra 2, and presumably that means a lot more RAM than you get on the Droid X right now. Do you guys think that this is going to come out to be a significant upgrade of the Droid X?
In the two respects that you said, yes, it's going to be faster and have a better screen, but otherwise, I mean, the camera's going to be the same. It's going to have the exact same body style. It'll probably ship with gingerbread, have a couple more sensors, but it'll be a pretty significant, I would say, mid-cycle upgrade. Does that make sense?
It does make sense, but that's very confusing because why would they do a significant upgrade and not change the body style? I can't think back to any other device where they upped the number of the device to the 2 or the 3 and they kept the body style exactly the same.
The accessories, I think, are one thing. There's a lot of accessories out there for the Droid X. They want people to pick up an X2, possibly pay more for it earlier in their contracts. To renew the contract. I don't know.
Also, keeping the same form factor and the same outer aspect could dramatically reduce the production costs. And this Droid X2 or Squared, as you call it, might be a cheaper high-end device.
Oh, that's a good point. They've already got all these Droid X casings. You know, they've got the manufacturing set up for them. So why not just change the internals and save, maybe make it a $50, $100 high-end smartphone? I mean, that would get a tremendous amount of attention.
Could be.
But then how does this sort of line up with the Droid Bionic? The Droid Bionic has how big is the screen on that?
I think it's 4 inches, right?
4 or 4.3. And that also has Tegra 2. That also has QHD. So I guess this makes sense. They need a high-end, big 4.3-inch display. The Droid Bionic isn't that phone. The Droid Bionic is sort of a smaller, more petite, pocketable.
Is LTE maybe the difference? Does the X squared have an LTE modem?
I was hearing no, but that would seem kind of ridiculous. But that could be it too. So the Droid Bionic has LTE, right?
Yeah, that was one of the launch devices.
They've got to be doing all their phones, their higher end phones with LTE now. So, the Kyocera Echo is one of those rare instances where it's a high end, big deal phone, but they're not putting the highest speed potential in there with the 4G. Very good. So Droid X Squared could be a cool device, especially for those wanting that bigger form factor, just in a more powerful package. Let us move on. So T-Mobile announced, and it's very interesting how companies are using Twitter and Facebook to announce things. I guess that makes sense. Announced that the G2X and the Sidekick 4G will be available on April 20th, which is in 9 days from now. They're going to take pre-orders on the 15th of April. The G2X we know about. It's an Optimus 2X. We've seen it before. It's going to be it's going to have the 4G HSPA plus connectivity. No surprises there. I'm kind of somewhat infatuated by the Sidekick 4G. Because the Sidekick brand, of course, used to be very strong, especially with teens. And those teens have since probably gone into their 20s, and now they're all using Android phones. And now they're coming out with the Sidekick 4G, which, of course, runs Android, has that same crazy form factor. And I just got to wonder if the timing's a little bit off here.
Well, I sort of look at it a different way. I think instead of going after the X, the former Sidekick users market, this is sort of an entry-level Android device to get people, to get younger kids, teenagers, sort of acclimated to the whole Android operating system, and then, move them into a Galaxy S or, God forbid for Samsung, a Motorola or HTC device.
Mm-hmm. Marketers are kind of crazy in the way that they think. They try to segment the buying population into different groups, and Microsoft did this with the Kin, right? And it's not right. They said that there's a group of people who have these very active lifestyles, and they want to be cool, and they're young, and they want to post to their wall constantly. And the truth is that these people want a high-end, awesome phone just like a 25-year-old, just like a 40-year-old does. So these sort of very targeted devices like the Sidekick 4G, I don't think are going to be successful because you guys know what I mean?
But I tend to disagree a little bit. I mean, a bit because I think the Sidekick 4G will be a huge hit. First of all, because it's got a tradition, and tradition often means a lot. And second, it's got that cool way of sliding out the screen to reveal the keyboard, and it's what I think teenagers and young people will dig. It's your typical texting, social networking smartphone, which happens to run the world's most popular operating system, and it's on T-Mobile, so I think it will be huge.
It runs Windows 7?
It looks like a toy, though, and this keyboard can be that usable. Well, we will review one, and we'll try to have an open mind, of course. And
I thought it looked pretty good in my hands-on, to be honest with you.
Yeah. How did it feel? The quality?
It felt good. That's what I'm saying. It was Samsung put together a nice product.
It does.
As they usually do.
Yeah. It does make me feel a little bit better that it's a Samsung product and
Not sharp.
not a Sharp. Sorry, Sharp. Although, yeah. Okay. So we wanted to end up here answering some Twitter questions. We asked 4 questions. And we got we got many, so let's pull up here from Twitter. Doot, 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 doot. You have to listen to my annoying humming. Oh, here's one from Niteano. Jack, no. He's asking, so no app for Windows Phone 7? Yes, no, maybe. We are looking into apps for all the platforms. Unfortunately, or fortunately, depending on your perspective, it's hard for us to commit to one operating system. Say we're just going to do an Android app. We have to do at least 3. So we're thinking about it. There might be a surprise this year with a Pocketnow app. We've been talking about it a lot. So let's go with maybe. Next.
Do people want apps for every single one of the websites that they go to?
Well, let me put it this way. The mobile version of Pocketnow, m.pocketnow.com, gets a lot of traffic.
Well, yeah, that's because people's browsers are redirected towards it.
Yeah, but they could bookmark the desktop version, which is linked to by the bottom of the page. I think people in general prefer mobile formatted stuff on their mobile phone, and this has been a debate for years. I mean, the truth is, when you're out and about, you don't have time to let a full page load with flash advertisements and full images. You just want to see information and see it fast. So I think there is a place for...
But how about like on the iPad, say? What would a Pocketnow application on the iPad offer that the regular site couldn't?
Well, I'd be hesitant to think about an iPad app because we don't cover tablets. But in that example... without giving away too much information about what we're thinking, we could customize the interface. We can make it make drop downs so people can see our most recent review. We could have advanced sorting options, things that the website could do, but to have that touch interface, everything's customized around the way we want it is kind of compelling.
And it's always cool to have a dedicated application.
Yeah, it is cool. So here's a question from B16BKOSTAS. I can't read that.
Whoa.
I don't know the answer to this. Do we know how many languages will be added on Windows Phone 7 for Mango? And if there will be Greek? How many languages does Windows Phone 7 support right now? Does either of you know?
I think it's 7. It's English, German, Italian, Spanish, French. I think it's 5.
Okay, so that makes sense. So he wants one released in Greek. Do you know if there's going to be additional languages added?
There will be, yeah, but I've heard that there will be some Asian languages, Japanese, Chinese, and it will be, and it would make huge sense to add some European languages too, but it all depends on what the marketing strategy is. I mean, just take a look at China. It's the world's biggest smartphone and phone consumer in the world. So getting priority on a Chinese input and language support will be, I think, higher priority than Greek. No offense to anybody. So I think it depends. And yes, there will be languages added, just that we don't know how many and which ones.
How does it work with Android? Does that support more languages out of the box?
I think yes. I think because I have a friend who is living in Israel, and he's obsessed about Hebrew localization, and he so found that Android has that.
Ah. Very good. The next question is from Hyacinth718. This is probably a good question for Evan. Is there anything you can come up with to explain the delays for Verizon's Windows Phone 7 device?
Testing, I guess. I mean, probably when they were originally testing it, it was the pre-Nodo, the original shipping version of Windows Phone 7, and then they had to test it with Nodo, and I mean, I don't think there is a great reason. Sprint was able to push it out, obviously, and of course, the GSM carriers were able to get it done on time. So I don't know. Verizon, always never ceases to amaze me. I mean, look at all the phones that we've seen, leaked for months and months, and they just never come out, like the Merge and the Samsung Gem. I mean, we saw those phones last year, and now we're 4 months into this year, and they still haven't been released.
I think a lot of it, as you imply, has to do with testing. Um, you know, I spent time in Verizon's testing facility. They There's a reason why they have the most reliable network, and I really feel that they do. They test every phone so tremendously much that it starts to sort of impact their release cycle a little bit. But I guess that's the compromise that they have to make in order to
Yeah,
be.
but I think that testing a smartphone for 3 or 4 months is just ridiculously too much. We've been hearing about the Verizon trophy since when? December, I think, when it was the first offer for Microsoft employees. And here we are, it's almost middle of April, and we are still hearing that it will be delayed to May. So come on, it's 5 months into 2011. It's how many months? November, December, and it's 7 months into Windows Phone 7 since launch. Not only Verizon will lose ground, but Microsoft will be hugely impacted by this. We were thinking, of course, that they are holding it back because of Nodo, because that the rollout schedule is not finished. But we got the Sprint arrive. It's out there with Nodo.
Yeah.
Nodo is rolling out to devices. What's holding them back?
Good point. So,
Maybe they can't decide on whether to call it the trophy or the 7 trophy.
Maybe it's something HTC related. Who knows? I mean, we're pointing fingers at Verizon and Microsoft, but maybe it's something on HTC side.
indeed. All right, let's move on to the next Twitter question. I think I'll take this one. It's from Surya Sendil, asking which phone's better, the Desire S, the Incredible S, the Nexus S. Those are the three choices, all of the S devices. Well, let's for a minute basket together the Desire S and the Incredible S because they're very similar. The Desire S is a little bit smaller, more pocket-friendly than the Incredible S. So we're looking at sort of the Desire S, Incredible S, and the Nexus S. My vote is for the Nexus S, and I say that because I really like the screen, the Super AMOLED. I like the curved display, although it's kind of a novelty. It looks really good on a tabletop. It's got this kind of very dark, stealthy design. When the phone's off, you can't see any buttons. It's very fast, probably as fast as the Desire S and the Incredible S. Yeah, I'd say the Nexus S. It's a really good phone. Let's just move on. That's too general. Okay. How about this one? No, not that one. Okay, here's.
Okay, go on.
Okay, so from Pocket Pro 115, it's always good to ask this question every few weeks. If you could have any phone, what would it be and why? So Tony, why don't we start with you? Any phone in the world, what would you have?
Out or not yet out?
Let's say phones we know about, so it can be a phone that's not out yet.
Well, of course, getting past my Dell Venue Pro fetish, which is behind me now, I'd say I'd go for either a LG Optimus 3D or an Evo 3D. Not because of the 3D gimmick, but because they seem to be the hottest smartphones out there at the moment.
Very good. What do you think, Evan?
Yeah, I would also have to say the Evo 3D. I spent a little time with it, and it looked like a really tight device. Everything we've been waiting for from HTC for over a year now.
Finally there. I'm going to go the route of the Sensation because I think without the 3D screen, you're going to get a thinner form factor. The Thunderbolt, the Evo 4G, they are thick phones. I can't get over it. The Desire HD is probably going to be around the same thickness compared to the Sensation. So my vote is for the Sensation.
But I think we could all settle for the iPhone 5 prototype, which is out there somewhere.
Yeah, that would probably be cool too. Well, only if there is new software on there.
Of course, iOS 5.
iOS 5, yeah. Well, I have no other questions in my queue that we're going to answer here. So I think that'll conclude the 10th episode of the Pocketnow PocketCast podcast. Thanks again for listening. We really, really, really appreciate you listening and your support. And we will talk to you next time. Bye-bye.
Bye.